Hello, hello, hello. Welcome everyone to the Sales Development Podcast. I am so excited that I finally got this gentleman on the line. Mr. Steve Benson is the CEO and founder of BadgerMap. And Steve, thank you so much for joining us today on the Sales Development Podcast.
Thanks for having me. Really excited.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been following the work that you've been doing for a while. And tell us a bit about your background, how you got involved as a sales rep, going to business school, and then eventually running BadgerMap.
I guess before business school, I worked in insurance, and then I went to business school at Stanford, and after that, went to IBM, and I was in a sales role there. Then I went to a software company called Autonomy, which got bought by HP. After that, I went to Google and spent about 4 years there, and then founded Badger. And what Badger does is help field salespeople be more effective when they're in the field. And we've been growing and building Badger for the last 5 years, and now it's a decent sized company, and we're doing a lot of fun stuff.
Yeah, I want to dig in on that journey. That is really interesting. And as you were looking at the problems that sales managers and sales reps were dealing with, how did you come up with Badger Maps, and what does it do to kind of solve problems for the sales reps?
Sure. So basically what Badger does is we focused on, and this is a unique perspective for a company, we focused on a certain end user, and that end user is the field salesperson. So that means that a person whose job it is to go out into the world and meet with customers face to face to do business with them. And that's kind of the person we focus on helping. We help them in a variety of ways. One of the most important is that we help them build out their schedules and their routes while they're in the field or planning on being in the field. The other thing we do is we help them find leads and figure out new people to do business with. And then we also show them all their territory and all their customers on a map, which gives them the ability to colorize and filterize the points in the map to help them focus on the right types of customers and get a feel for what the territory looks like, what they should be spending their time with, who they should focus on, how they should get there, in what order, at what time, all that sort of stuff. So we do a lot of the blocking and tackling. We gather a lot of data automatically. Historically, there's a lot of busy work associated with this job, like a lot of things to do and data to capture and things to write down, and we do a lot of that automatically.
Oh man, I'm sure that the field sales reps love you guys to take some of that burden off their plate. That's huge. And I think a lot of the folks who listen to this podcast would be interested on the lead aspect and finding new leads. How do you guys help the field reps and potentially, I guess, the marketers and the SDRs to find new leads on that?
Well, so field salespeople are often selling to kind of, if you walk up and down Main Street, USA, or Main Street, England, it doesn't matter where you are. The businesses that you see up and down the street are often endpoints of consumption, I guess I call them, meaning this place didn't make the thing that you're getting from them. But they're selling it to you. So like a gas station didn't make the gas; they're the point of consumption. A dentist office, they didn't make the machine that cleans your teeth. The point of that you consume that service that goes along with that handheld tooth cleaner. A restaurant didn't grow the food; they're preparing the food and kind of serving it up. So these places, there's lots of them, but they buy things that then get consumed by customers. And so it's a really tricky group of people to do lead generation with, because if you're trying to sell to pharmaceutical companies, there are only so many pharmaceutical companies. There are tools to find out who is running what division, that sort of thing. There's not really as many tools to find out who runs that gift shop on Main Street, who's in charge of that bar over there on the corner. So the way to reach those people is not over the phone, but by literally showing up on their doorstep and being like, "Hi, when's the manager in? I sell wine, and you guys sell a lot of wine, and because you're a bar, and I have some great wine, I'd love them to check out." So what we do is we have this massive database that we kind of expose to the user and help them see every restaurant in Michigan. Like I was just talking to a customer the other day. He sells tomatoes to every pizza place and every Italian restaurant in the state of Michigan. And there's a lot of there's a lot of pizza places in Michigan. It's a big state, right?
Sure.
And every little town has one. And Italian food, it's popular in Michigan just like everywhere else in the world. And they sell high-end tomatoes. And his job is to show up, walk into the place, meet with the chef or the cook, and get him to do what they call a tasting, which means he's going to open a can of tomatoes, and he wants them to open one of their cans of tomatoes, and then and taste both of them next to each other, and hopefully the chef will say, "Wow, these are some great tomatoes. I realize they're more expensive, but I got to buy these tomatoes." So that's the sort of person that we're helping. We know where all the pizza places are. We know where all the Italian food restaurants are. We know where everything is, and so we're able to expose this in a really clean, easy way for the field salesperson.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, so that they can get some momentum, whereas in the past they'd have to sit there and dig through, do their own prospecting, try to find, and then hit the streets. And
exactly.
Who knows whether they're going to be able to get anything going. The way that I think about it is it's almost like 5 or 10 years ago, before everyone had smartphones, we had to call a cab. And now with it's like, does anybody do that anymore? I mean, I feel so sorry for the taxi cab company. But, now it's like everyone's got a supercomputer in their pocket. We've got the maps coming into our phone, and suddenly Uber, Lyft, these new industries are born. And it seems like in a lot of ways, Badger is leveraging sort of the same, I guess, macro trend.
Yeah, it's similar. I mean, we're built on top of Google Maps, just like Lyft or Uber are. I think Uber might be swapping that out though, especially now that Google's suing them. They've done bad things. They're sorry. Alleged bad things.
Lesson learned.
Yeah. Oops. We'll see what happens there. That was a bombshell of news yesterday. But by the time people are listening to this podcast, it'll probably be old news. But it's similar. We're built on top of Google Maps. We're leveraging the APIs, application protocol interfaces, the ability to plug into streams of data, and we're basically surfacing everything in one place in a useful way for people.
It's amazing, and so take me back a little bit in your own story. You're a field rep, or you're in the sales industry. You go to business school. How does Badger come into your head, and what's the story of you setting this up, and now it's super successful, and 5 years later? I mean, how did that happen? It's
funny. A lot of my friends in business school, they set out to be entrepreneurs. That was their goal. They wanted to they wanted to work at create a company and build something, and that was never really my main focus. I was I left school and went to work for IBM, one of the biggest companies in the world. I kind of went from big company to big company, although Google didn't feel like that big of a company because I was on their enterprise team selling Maps and Gmail and like Google Apps and their enterprise software. And that was a smaller team at the time. It's obviously not their big business. So that didn't feel like a huge company. It felt more like a startup. We were taking on Microsoft. But I think it was never the most natural fit for me at a big company. And until I was at a small company and started a small company, I never realized that. But I actually, I guess I just had the idea, and I was like, wow, this is a real problem, and I knew the problem, because I had experienced it obviously because I was in field sales for my whole career, so I understood it pretty well, and I knew the tools and strategies to fix it really well because those are the products that I'd worked with mostly at Google. So I was like, oh well, I mean, I'm kind of uniquely positioned to here's the problem, and I really understand the answer, and I really understand the problem, and so that I kind of fleshed it out, and it was like, wow, this seems like a way to really create some value for people, and I kind of think. I think it was Bruce Lee that coined this phrase. I forget how he said it exactly, but he coined it when he was like 21 in like a letter to his girlfriend or something. You take a percentage I forget how you said it, but you get basically of the value that you create in the world, you keep a percentage of it. So if you help, I think he said something like, if you help 1 million people, then you'll and make 1 million people's lives better, you'll make $1 million. It was some quote like that. But basically, you get a percentage of the value that you create, and this seemed to be a way I could create a lot of value for a lot of people. Other jobs that I could be doing right now, I could be managing 50 salespeople or something, and maybe I'd be able to help them all if I tried really hard, sell 5 or 10% more, but really it's mostly on them. Maybe the structure I put in place or something would make the company that much more money. But right now, this is touching thousands and thousands of salespeople every day. And so for sure it helps. They wouldn't use it every day if it didn't help them. So creating a software company, well, probably any company really, allows you to have like an outsized influence and create more value than you otherwise would have been able to. It scales.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting as I hear you talk about it. It's almost like you put a puzzle together and the pieces fit really well because you identified a real problem, you lived the problem, and you talked to people about it, and this was a real problem. You knew the problem, and so you could talk about it with some expertise, and then the kind of piece came together where you had some background in using the tools that would eventually solve the problem. And it's like suddenly, okay, the puzzle pieces are together, and then the other point you made is how it scales to help even more people. Based on the fact that just by downloading it from I'm on the iTunes store right now, and you can download the app, and that goes out to millions of potential sales reps all over the country right now.
Yeah, it works all over the world. I mean, it's we've got customers all over Africa and Asia and Europe and places all over. The funny thing about software and the iPhone and the Android devices as platforms is they're everywhere. I mean, the iPhone's huge in South Korea. It's. Actually, South Korea is like the one place that the iPhone's not huge because that's where Samsung's based.
Oh, right.
I love how I use an example and it's like the one wrong example.
Yeah, well, hopefully they're not exploding in their pockets. So, yeah, but yeah, I mean, Samsung, that's they own South Korea basically. So.
Yeah, and they're very patriotic there, from what I understand. So they use Samsung, they drive Kias, and Hyundais. They're like they spit at Toyotas in the street.
Right.
So the one example I gave was the wrong example, but Denmark. The iPhone's huge in Denmark.
Right. And to your point, I mean, it scales immensely because there's sales reps going around to main streets, in Denmark, and it's just a question of localizing the software and making it useful on the ground over there. I think a lot of the people that listen to this, if you're kind of thinking like, one of these days I'd like to do something entrepreneurial, and in Steven's example, it's like putting those puzzle pieces together. Is it a real problem? Is it something that's, being faced by more than just 5 or 6 people in your social network? Do you know the problem? Do you have some experience with the technology? Do you have the business acumen, that you picked up in business school? And, is it scalable? If you can put those together, you might have a business on your hands, right?
Yeah. Well, and I would encourage people to try it. It's one of these things. It's a wonderful experience to create something. I would also encourage people to work at small companies. The smaller, the better. Just because you get more exposure to greater responsibility. Like a guy who's a total rock star on my team that I hired right out of college, and he's been with us for probably 4.5 years. One of our first employees. He was 23 years old or something at the time, but now he's one of the main leaders in the company, right? So he runs a division. It's
amazing.
It's one, and if he had gone to work for a big company, he'd still be at grunt level, right? So, but because he was, it's like if you join a small company that is growing quickly, it just creates all this personal growth and development. You were mentioning the different things that to think about when you're starting a company. One thing jumped out at me: the key question that you have to ask when you're starting a business and you have an idea is this a problem that people will pay to solve? And that's a tricky question because consumers, not businesses, but consumers, they hate paying even to solve relatively serious problems. Like there are tons of people that never buy software except for they're kind of required to buy software from Microsoft or else they can't run their computers and stuff. But in general, consumers don't like to pay for things, and so there's a lot of the consumer businesses, kind of function by making their end user, the consumer, the product, like Facebook or really anything that has anything to do with advertising that you're using that you don't pay for. You are the product. They're packaging you up and selling your eyeballs to people, basically. But sorry, I've got my little yappy dog here that
that's okay. We welcome all guests here on the Sales Development Podcast.
Fantastic. We have Badger's a dog friendly company, and so we have dogs in the office, and I've got this little fluffy Pomeranian that I acquired through marriage, and and so he's a yappy little creature. We also have a lab pit mix running around the office here. He's a puppy. He's 4 months old, 5 months old. So he's off the walls.
Well, that's to your point that you were making. Consumers will spend money on their pets. That's for sure. But
that they will.
when it comes to themselves, they're very difficult.
So the pet food industry. So we have several customers actually who sell pet food. They're because the way you sell pet food is with field salespeople, either going around to pet stores, that's one of these Main Street businesses, or going around to veterinarians, another Main Street business. And so you have to get your reps in front of in front of these places and get them to carry your pet food on their shelves, or even better yet, if they're a vet, to recommend the pet food. And it's I was talking to the VP of sales at one of these pet food companies. It's like a $65 billion industry, pet food, which you'd never guess. I mean, there's so many industries that seem boring, but and a lot of them have field salespeople in them that because it's things that it's like, oh yeah, of course there's an industry around pet food. But I mean, the margins are amazing. Like it's huge market, $65 billion. I mean, it's we had a company that was selling ferret food using our product, ferret food, and I'm like, is that a thing? I mean, like, can they see cat food or something? But it was a huge market. I mean, it's a wild world out there. I mean,
it really is, and I think that we, in the Silicon Valley kind of bubble, we tend to focus if it's not something, that everyone else is talking about. It's like it's almost like it doesn't exist, and then all of a sudden you realize there's $1 billion market for ferret food, and you're just like, wait a minute. Okay.
How many people have ferrets? I mean, yeah. I had 2 ferrets growing up, and thinking back, we did have ferret food.
Right.
They don't eat a lot of it. They're tiny little animals, but I don't know how much it costs when my mom was buying it at the time. But I mean, this guy, I think he was out of Portland or something. He claimed that he had the best ferret food around that was really better for them, and but he had a whole team of guys selling it.
Right, and I think to your point, it's like when you're sitting there going, okay, there's a big problem I want to solve. I think that there's a market out there for this, but will people pay for it, right? And and trying to, I mean, actually, I had a guest on the show once who she ran a company that did market testing, and the Canadian government requires that you do market testing before they'll fund a startup in this program that she was talking about. And so she went out and found out, will people actually pay for this first before they invested a bunch of money in the company? And sometimes you're on TechCrunch or something, and you look at some of these companies and you're just like, will people pay for this? you know,
Yeah.
I'm not
Well,
sure.
well,
Yeah.
the Silicon Valley has a bunch of companies that it's kind of like, well, if we're able to get the data or we're able to get the eyeballs, we'll be able to monetize this thing. And they've, they're obviously right on that all the time. But I would be, all those companies are going to need a ton of investment and a ton of, it's a different. I think it's way easier if you can do something that actually is going to have people from, day 6, when you have a basic skeleton of the product to talk about and kind of pitch to, that you can sell before the thing even exists. Way easier, because you can float the company. And that's a weird thing about us compared to most companies is we didn't bring on investment. We did a small friends and family angel round, but we don't have professional investors involved in the company, and that's because from before the thing even existed, really, we were able to be selling it, right, and people were picking it up off the table when it was just an idea. So that allowed us to kind of fund the company and keep the thing floating, and today we bring money in, and then we pay people salaries with it. So
It's almost like a business.
yeah,
I mean, right? You look
it's
at some of
crazy.
these companies, it's like, okay, but no, that's amazing. That's great. And so take us back just to back to 5 years ago or whatever. How when it was you and your friends and family and you guys are starting this up, how did it form into where it is today? As far as, did you start with hiring engineers, salespeople? Were you doing the sales? How did you kind of form it at the beginning and grow it to the structure that it is now?
One weird thing about the way we formed it, and I think this is a trick for companies, is we had a professional salesperson, me, from day one, right?
Yeah.
And that does a couple things that aren't necessarily intuitive. I mean, obviously, you're going to be able to bring money in faster, and sales is a tricky skill and a professional skill that there's strategies and ways to do it, and there's a reason it's one of the more common jobs. It's in the world. But it's a trade, right? Like you're not, if you don't know how to do it, you probably aren't going to be good at it, right? And you can do it terribly, but which is different than like engineering or something. Like I can't be a terrible engineer because I can't be any kind of engineer, right? It's but someone can do sales terribly. But it was very few startups have a professional salesperson from day one, and it was a real advantage for us. And it could, because not not only for the obvious reason, which you can bring in money faster, and if you have someone who knows how to do that, but also I was selling it as an idea and selling it as a concept, which allowed us to tighten in on what industries we should go after, which features should be the first ones. Because I was selling a thing that was just an idea, right? And I was reaching out to people who would be, or who I thought would be, our correct buyer. And I remember I had a little matrix of like the different roles in an organization that would be kind of floating around and touching this, and then the different features across the top and different capabilities, and trying to hone in on what was the most important of the capabilities that we were building, and having those conversations with people. And I was probably selling it to, it didn't exist yet, but I was in engaged conversations with probably 100 people or something that were the would-be buyers of this product, and that allowed us to build the right thing that they wanted to buy right away. And then after that, so after because we had that good feedback, and then once we created the basic thing, we were able to sell it to a chunk of them, and that's a weird structural thing that we did, just out of luck, just because of my background, that allowed us to I think really helped us be successful. The first hires, were engineers. You need, or an engineer really, because you need someone to build the thing, and then we also had we had a couple outsourced engineers as well, people that didn't work at the company but were doing some different specialized things for us, it's hard for one person to do everything in engineering, and so we kind of brought in the different skill sets and areas of expertise that as we needed them. But really, I mean, the thing was built by one guy, more or less.
Amazing. So tell me about, people are busy out there. Your target prospects are busy, and you've got your matrix and you've got your idea, and you're sitting there. How do you approach them to talk about something that is still conceptual, and get them to give you 20 minutes to go through what you're thinking about?
Yeah, well, a lot of people are interested in new ideas and new businesses, and it's exciting for them, and they're kind of sitting in their boring day jobs, and they're like, yeah, I'd like to talk to this person about this cool thing. So people are more willing to like interact with you if you're open and honest and say, hey, we're building this new company and it's got to do with this, and I'm trying to figure out exactly what's the most important things to someone like you, because you're our key here. Someone like you is the buyer, so I'd love to just pick your brain for a few minutes about what you think about this, and if it's something that would be useful, and what areas are the most important. A good chunk of people will get back to you and say, oh, that's cool, I'm interested in that. Like, this is I think especially if it's something that is relatively interesting to them, they'll take a call. I also we kind of went through friends and business school classmates and people that I kind of knew from my past, business stuff, and even if they weren't the right buyer, if they were at the right company, I could get them to introduce me to the right buyer, kind of as a, hey, my friend's doing this, would you take a few minutes and talk to him? But we had a nice pipeline by the time we actually even had our most basic prototype. And then we could show it to people and be like, hey, just wanted you to see this, to get feedback on it, to tell me what this is the thing that we built, based on some of your feedback here. It would be great to see if this is what you had in mind. And they'll take that call too, because people like to be an expert, and people are experts if you reach out to the right people. So that was kind of the trick to getting the thing going.
Yeah, and then as you said, some of them ended up becoming customers, right? Because they're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is pretty cool. I'll go ahead and give you guys a shot.
Yeah, we had some real companies jump into the boat on the most basic product. So the most basic product just was a map, a Google map, and we were putting the points, their customers, on that map, and then they could colorize them by an attribute. So they could say, oh, well, colorize these points by what type of customer is it? I sell to dentists, and I sell to orthodontists, and I sell to pediatricians, and I would, now I'm looking at my map and I can see with a color which ones are pediatricians and which ones are dentists and which ones are orthodontists. So that was it in its most basic form, and we had real companies purchase it just for that, because they were like, yeah, and part of it is the sales process of, hey, you get, this is what we have now, but you guys can buy it for only this much. It's gonna in a year it's gonna do all these other things, but it's gonna cost 5 or 10 times more. And you guys getting in on the ground floor here locks the price in, and you get to be on the bleeding edge of this innovation curve, and it's going to give you an advantage against your competitors. And that, nice. And people can kind of see, they're like, oh yeah, well, this is cool alone the way it is right now, it'll help our people. And if you also make it do this, this, and this, once you add the filters, and once you add the ability for us to add the filters, so you can make the pediatricians disappear, or once you give them the ability to, draw a little circle or line around a group of the points, and automatically build a route for that's optimized. And then be able to schedule that out and move the times around, and that would be, that's going to save these guys 30 minutes a day. That's worth a ton. So even though it doesn't do that now, you tell me it's going to in a year, and I'll buy this now in its current form because it's cool.
Right, and then you're stacking up all the product ideas. You've got a whole huge list of product ideas coming in from people, and now you can prioritize those based on what the workload looks like, and make the product even better, when you go back out to them. That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, so
And
that's how we did it.
that's such a great story. I think a lot of people build products and then hope for the best, and it's like you got to do that initial hustle. And I think bringing in your sales background, like to your point, is huge because you're a professional salesperson, so you can strategize first before just kind of launching into your initial campaign. So.
Yeah, and that came naturally for us, but it wasn't planned. I mean, that was just that was just how it worked for us. I think because and it's tough, right? Like if you weren't a salesperson, it'd be tough to hire a salesperson that early over, say, like a product designer or a product manager or an engineer. But it's to have someone with real sales skills around would be I think it's a huge advantage for a startup because it keeps them customer focused.
Focused and bringing in the money, hopefully.
Right,
Yep,
right, exactly. And this goes for companies of a lot of sizes. I mean, I think it's very easy to not listen to your salespeople and your customer service people, your customer success people. Really, anyone who's customer facing. Like if I wanted to evaluate a company on how I thought I was going to do for an investment or for just anything really, if I wanted to work there, those are the people I'd want to talk to. I'd want to talk to those people and find out how happy are the customers, how often do they stick with the company or do they leave it, do they churn, what are they asking for coming next, or does the company give them what they're asking for after a bit? Like if a bunch of people are asking for a certain feature, does the company prioritize that? I think those are great indicators of whether a place is a good company to work for or invest in or anything. I think that customer centricity is really important.
I agree 100%. That's a really good point. And that's some, folks who are on the podcast and you're looking at companies potentially for your next employment situation. Talk to some of the sales reps, talk to some of the CSMs, and get some of that information before you make that huge life decision of going to a company. And it ends up they're ignoring their customers and things are going downhill. But no, and I'm sure that you've built the company to be customer centric. What's next for Badger over the next year or two, and what are you excited about for the future coming up?
Well, we've got a bunch more things coming up. We on the product side, we're expanding the company. We opened opened offices in Europe. We've got offices in Utah, sales and customer success offices in Utah that we're just building out right now. We've got a team in the Philippines for doing customer service stuff, and we're still growing here in San Francisco as well, where we started. So that's where we've got there's a lot of stuff on my plate. I mean, I spend most of my time either talking and interacting with the important customers and strategic customers. I guess I spend probably more than half of my time on like HR type stuff, the hiring, the recruiting, the mentoring, the coaching, all that stuff, the culture side of the company. So that's what's kind of filling my plate right now. What I'm excited about right now, the product I'm really excited about. Like 5 years in, you've really got a real thing that fixes problems and operates at scale. The marketing stuff's really exciting right now. We get a ton of people finding out about the product and showing up on our doorstep and saying, "Hey, I'd like to do a free trial." So that I'm definitely excited about. And along that line of thought, actually, if any of your listeners here sign up for a free trial, just have them mention the Sales Development Podcast, and we'll give them a couple months free of Badger. So just let our sales rep or one of our customer service reps or anyone who you interact with, when you sign up for a trial, just mention the name of the show and they'll pop 2 months free on there.
Nice. Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes as well, so they can get straight over to your website and check it out. Steve, this has been awesome, man. I mean, I think that a lot of the folks who listen to this are thinking about going the entrepreneurial path, or they're just more curious about how that whole journey takes place. So definitely appreciate all the details and all the info about how you built the company, and all the best in your continued success.
Thanks. I really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun, David.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Steve. Take care.
All right. Take care.